The morning sun painted the Arizona desert in shades of gold and crimson as 12-year-old Emma Henderson clutched her water canteen with trembling hands. She had been walking for 3 days now, her small feet blistered and bleeding inside worn leather boots. The wagon train that carried her family west had been attacked by bandits near Devil's Canyon, and in the chaos that followed, she had become separated from everyone she knew. Emma's father, a blacksmith from Missouri, had promised her mother they would find a better life in California. Her mother, Sarah, had been reluctant to leave their comfortable home, but the promise of gold and opportunity had eventually convinced her. Now, as Emma stumbled through the harsh desert landscape, those dreams seemed like distant memories from another lifetime. The attack had happened so suddenly. One moment, Emma was helping her mother prepare the evening meal beside their covered wagon, and the next, masked riders were thundering down from the rocky hills, guns blazing, and voices shouting. Her father had grabbed his rifle and pushed Emma toward a cluster of large boulders, telling her to hide and stay quiet no matter what happened. From her hiding place, Emma had watched in horror as the bandits overwhelmed the small wagon train. The settlers, mostly families seeking new lives in the West, were no match for the experienced outlaws. When the shooting finally stopped and the dust settled, an eerie silence fell over the camp. Emma had waited until nightfall before emerging from her hiding spot, only to find the wagons ransacked and abandoned. She had called out for her parents, her voice echoing off the canyon walls, but received no answer. The bandits had taken the horses and most of the supplies, leaving behind only scattered belongings and broken dreams. With no knowledge of which direction the survivors might have gone, Emma had chosen to follow what appeared to be an old Indian trail leading south, hoping it would take her to a town or settlement. Now, 3 days later, her water was nearly gone, and the relentless desert sun was taking its toll. Her lips were cracked and bleeding, and every step sent shooting pains through her feet. She knew she was lost, but the thought of giving up never entered her mind. Her mother had always told her she was strong, stronger than she realized, and Emma held onto those words like a lifeline. As the sun reached its peak, Emma sought shelter beneath a large saguaro cactus. The shade provided little relief from the oppressive heat, but she knew she had to rest. She allowed herself a small sip of water, savoring each precious drop on her parched tongue. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, its beauty both magnificent and terrifying. It was then that she heard the sound that made her blood run cold. The distinctive rattle that could only mean one thing. A diamondback rattlesnake, easily 6 feet long and as thick as her arm, had coiled itself just 10 feet away from where she sat. Its triangular head was raised, and its forked tongue flicked in and out as it tasted the air. Emma had heard enough stories about rattlesnakes to know that one bite could kill her within hours. She froze, not daring to move even the smallest muscle. The snake's rattle continued its ominous warning, a sound that seemed to fill the entire desert. Sweat beaded on Emma's forehead, but she didn't dare wipe it away. She had heard that rattlesnakes could strike faster than the human eye could follow, and at this distance, she would have no chance of escaping. Minutes passed like hours as girl and snake regarded each other in the blazing heat. Emma's legs began to cramp from remaining motionless for so long, but she gritted her teeth and endured the discomfort. The snake showed no signs of backing down, its rattle never ceasing its deadly song. Just when Emma thought she couldn't remain still for another second, a shadow fell across her vision. A tall figure had appeared as if from nowhere, moving with such silence that even the snake seemed surprised. Emma's heart hammered in her chest as she took in the sight of the newcomer, a Native American man, probably Apache based on his clothing and the way he carried himself. The man was perhaps 30 years old, with long black hair braided with leather strips and feathers. His skin was bronzed by years under the desert sun, and his dark eyes held a wisdom that seemed far older than his years. He wore buckskin pants and moccasins, with a simple shirt that had seen better days. A bow was slung across his back, and a knife hung at his side. What struck Emma most was the complete absence of fear in the man's demeanor. He looked at the rattlesnake with the same casual interest one might show a butterfly. Slowly, deliberately, he reached down and picked up a long, straight stick that lay nearby. The snake's attention shifted to this new threat, its rattle increasing in intensity. With movements so fluid they seemed like a dance, the Apache warrior began to circle the snake, using the stick to redirect its attention away from Emma. The rattler struck at the stick twice, its fangs clicking against the wood. But the man was always one step ahead. Gradually, he herded the snake away from Emma and toward a cluster of rocks where it could retreat with dignity intact. Only when the rattlesnake had disappeared completely into the rocks did the Apache turn his attention to Emma. She expected him to speak, but instead, he simply studied her with those penetrating dark eyes. She could see intelligence there, and something else, perhaps compassion, though it was difficult to tell. Emma tried to stand, but her legs had gone numb from sitting motionless for so long. The Apache noticed her struggle and, without asking permission, knelt beside her and began to massage her cramped muscles with expert hands. His touch was gentle but firm, and within minutes, feeling began to return to her legs. When he was satisfied that she could stand, the Apache rose and offered her his hand. Emma hesitated for just a moment. She had heard terrible stories about Apache warriors, but something in his manner convinced her that he meant no harm. She took his hand and allowed him to help her to her feet. The Apache looked at her water canteen, which was clearly nearly empty, then at her sunburned face and cracked lips. Without a word, he produced his own water container, made from what appeared to be a cleaned and treated animal bladder, and offered it to her. Emma drank gratefully, the water cool and sweet despite its unusual container. When she had drunk her fill, the Apache corked the container and secured it at his belt. He then looked at her questioningly, clearly trying to determine what a young white girl was doing alone in the desert. Emma tried to explain about the wagon train and the attack, but the Apache showed no sign of understanding English. Frustrated by the language barrier, Emma began to mime her story. She pointed in the direction she had come from, and made gestures indicating wagons, horses, and men with guns. The Apache watched intently, occasionally nodding as if he understood. When she finished her crude pantomime, he looked thoughtful for a long moment. Then, to Emma's surprise, he spoke. His English was broken and heavily accented, but understandable. "You lost," he said, pointing at her. "Family gone?" Emma nodded, tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. The Apache considered this, then pointed to himself. "I am Ayana. I help." Emma had never heard the name Ayana before, but something about the way he said it suggested it had meaning beyond just identification. Later, she would learn that Ayana meant eternal blossom in his language, a name given to him by his grandmother because she believed he would bring life and hope wherever he went. Ayana gestured for Emma to follow him, and she fell into step behind his confident stride. He moved through the desert as if following a well-marked road, reading signs in the landscape that were invisible to Emma's untrained eyes. He would occasionally stop to examine a track in the sand, or to study the flight pattern of distant birds, gathering information about their surroundings that Emma couldn't begin to understand. As they walked, Emma found herself studying her unlikely rescuer. Everything about him spoke of a deep connection to this harsh land. He stepped over cacti spines without looking down, navigated around hidden holes and loose rocks with unconscious ease, and seemed to know exactly where he was going despite the absence of any obvious landmarks. The afternoon sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon, when Ayana led Emma to what appeared to be nothing more than a jumble of red rocks. But as they drew closer, Emma could see that the rocks formed a natural shelter, complete with a small spring that bubbled up from underground. It was like an oasis in the middle of the desert, a hidden sanctuary that could easily be missed by anyone who didn't know exactly where to look. Ayana gestured for Emma to sit by the spring while he gathered wood for a fire. The water was crystal clear and surprisingly cold, and Emma drank deeply before splashing some on her sunburned face. For the first time in 3 days, she felt a glimmer of hope that she might actually survive this ordeal. As the sun set and painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Ayana built a small, nearly smokeless fire using techniques Emma had never seen before. He produced dried meat and some kind of flat bread from a leather pouch, sharing the simple meal without hesitation. The food was unlike anything Emma had ever tasted, but she was too hungry to be particular. That night, As Emma lay wrapped in a blanket that Ayanna had somehow produced from his minimal gear, she found herself wondering about this mysterious man who had saved her life. Who was he? Where had he come from? And most importantly, what would happen to her now? The desert night was surprisingly cold after the blazing heat of the day, and Emma was grateful for both the fire and the warm blanket. She could hear Ayanna moving around the camp, keeping watch, and she felt safer than she had since the attack on the wagon train. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, she was alive, and she was not alone. As sleep finally claimed her, Emma's last thought was of her parents. Were they alive somewhere, searching for her? Or had they perished in the attack, leaving her truly orphaned in this vast wilderness? She pushed the dark thoughts away and focused instead on the steady breathing of her Apache guardian. Whatever tomorrow brought, she would face it with the strength her mother had always said she possessed. Dawn broke with a symphony of desert sounds that Emma had never noticed before. Birds called to each other from hidden perches among the cacti, and somewhere in the distance, a coyote's howl echoed across the landscape. She awoke to find Ayanna already up, tending to the fire and preparing what appeared to be some kind of tea made from desert plants. The Apache warrior looked refreshed, despite having kept watch through much of the night. He offered Emma the warm beverage, which had a slightly bitter but not unpleasant taste. As she sipped the tea, Emma felt strength returning to her body. Whatever plants Ayanna had used, they seemed to have healing properties that worked better than any medicine she had known. After their simple breakfast, Ayanna spent time examining Emma's feet, which had been badly blistered by her 3-day trek through the desert. He disappeared into the rocks for a few minutes and returned with several different plants. Using techniques passed down through generations of his people, he created a healing paste that he gently applied to her wounds. The relief was immediate, and Emma marveled at the Apache's knowledge of desert medicine. While they waited for the paste to work its magic, Ayanna attempted to communicate more about Emma's situation. Through a combination of broken English and gestures, Emma learned that Ayanna belonged to a small band of Apache who lived in the mountains to the south. His people had been watching the movements of the bandits who had attacked Emma's wagon train, and Ayanna had been sent out as a scout to gather information. Emma also learned that Ayanna was not just any warrior. He was considered a medicine man among his people, gifted with healing abilities and a deep connection to the spiritual world. This explained his vast knowledge of plants and his almost supernatural ability to move through the desert without disturbing its natural balance. As the morning progressed, Emma found herself feeling stronger and more hopeful. The healing paste had worked wonders on her feet, and Ayanna had fashioned better protection for them using strips of soft leather from his own supplies. When he judged her ready to travel, they set out across the desert once again. Their destination, Ayanna explained in his limited English, was a trading post about 2 days' walk to the east. The owner was a man named Joshua Martinez, a Mexican-American who was known for his fair dealing with both white settlers and Apache bands. Ayanna believed Martinez would be able to help Emma find word of her parents, or at least arrange safe passage to the nearest town. As they traveled, Emma began to notice the incredible richness of life in what she had initially thought was an empty wasteland. Ayanna showed her how to read the signs that revealed the presence of water, how to identify edible plants, and how to recognize the tracks of different animals. The desert, she realized, was not empty at all. It was simply a different kind of abundant life than what she had known in Missouri. During their rest stops, Ayanna would tell Emma stories about his people and their connection to the land. He spoke of spirits that lived in the rocks and trees, of ancient ceremonies that honored the balance between all living things, and of warriors who could run for days without tiring because they moved in harmony with the desert's rhythm. Emma found herself fascinated by these stories, which were so different from anything she had heard in her sheltered upbringing. The Apache worldview seemed to encompass a deep respect for nature and an understanding of humanity's place within the larger web of life. It was both foreign and somehow familiar to her, as if it answered questions she hadn't even known she was asking. On their second day of travel together, they encountered something that would forever change Emma's understanding of the Apache people. As they crested a small ridge, they saw smoke rising in the distance. Not the thin, controlled smoke of a campfire, but the thick, black smoke that could only mean destruction. Ayanna's demeanor changed instantly. His relaxed confidence was replaced by the tense alertness of a predator sensing danger. He motioned for Emma to stay low and quiet as they carefully approached the source of the smoke. What they found was a scene of devastation that made Emma's stomach turn. A small Apache camp had been attacked and burned. The traditional wickiups, dome-shaped shelters made of branches and grass, were reduced to smoldering ruins. Personal belongings were scattered across the ground, and it was clear that whoever had lived here had been forced to flee in great haste. Ayana moved through the destroyed camp with the careful attention of someone reading a book. He examined footprints, studied the direction of the attack, and checked the remains of the fires to determine how long ago the assault had taken place. His face grew increasingly grim as he pieced together what had happened. Through gestures and broken English, he explained to Emma that this had been the camp of his cousin's family. The attackers were white men, probably the same bandits who had hit Emma's wagon train. They had struck the Apache camp at dawn, when most of the warriors were away hunting. The women, children, and elders had been forced to flee into the desert with nothing but the clothes they wore. Emma watched Ayana's reaction with growing understanding. The pain in his eyes was the same pain she had felt when she found her own family's wagon train destroyed. These Apache people weren't the savage enemies she had been taught to fear. They were human beings with families and homes and dreams, just like her own people. The bandits had brought suffering to both white settlers and Native Americans alike. Ayana spent the rest of the day following the trail left by the fleeing Apache families. His tracking skills were remarkable. He could determine not just which direction they had gone, but how many people had passed, whether any were injured, and even how long ago they had been there. Emma followed silently, beginning to understand that she was witnessing abilities that few white people had ever seen. As evening approached, they finally caught up with the survivors. The group consisted of about 15 people, mostly women, children, and 2 elderly men who had been too old to join the hunting party. They had taken shelter in a hidden canyon, where a small stream provided water, and the high walls offered protection from both the elements and potential enemies. Emma's arrival with Ayana caused quite a stir among the Apache survivors. She was clearly the first white person many of them had ever seen up close, and the children peeked at her from behind their mothers' skirts with a mixture of curiosity and fear. The adults regarded her with wariness, unsure why Ayana had brought an enemy into their midst. Ayana spoke at length with the group in their own language, his hands moving expressively as he told them Emma's story. Gradually, the suspicion in their eyes was replaced by something approaching sympathy. They, too, had lost everything to the same bandits who had destroyed Emma's family. An elderly woman who seemed to be a leader among the survivors approached Emma and spoke to her in Apache. When Emma looked confused, the woman smiled and switched to heavily accented but understandable English. She introduced herself as Adsila, which meant blossom in their language. She had learned English years ago from traders and missionaries, making her one of the few in the group who could communicate directly with Emma. Adsila explained that her grandson was among the hunting party that had been away when the attack occurred. Like Emma, she didn't know if her family members were alive or dead. This shared uncertainty created an immediate bond between the elderly Apache woman and the young white girl. That night, as the Apache survivors shared their meager supplies and told stories around a carefully concealed fire, Emma found herself welcomed into their circle with a warmth she hadn't expected. Despite having lost everything, these people showed remarkable resilience and generosity. They shared their food with her, made sure she was warm, and included her in their evening rituals of gratitude for surviving another day. Emma learned that the Apache band had been living peacefully in this area for generations, trading with Mexican and white settlers and avoiding the conflicts that plagued other regions. The attack had come without warning and without provocation. The bandits had simply wanted to steal the horses and supplies the Apache had accumulated through years of careful work. As the night deepened, Ayana sat with Emma, away from the main group. He seemed troubled by something beyond the immediate crisis. Through their improving communication, Emma learned that he was facing a difficult decision. His duty was to find the hunting party and warn them about the attack on their families, but he also felt responsible for getting Emma safely to the trading post where she might find help. Emma could see the conflict playing out in Ayana's expression. He was torn between his obligations to his people and his promise to help her. She had grown to trust and respect this Apache warrior who had saved her life, and the thought of being abandoned in the desert was terrifying. But she also understood that his first loyalty had to be to his own people. The next morning brought unexpected developments that would change everything. Adsila announced that she and several other survivors had decided to accompany Ayana and Emma to Martinez's trading post. The elderly woman explained that they needed to trade for supplies and weapons to help them survive until the hunting party returned. More importantly, Martinez might have information about the bandits' whereabouts that could help them recover their stolen horses and belongings. The decision to travel together transformed the dynamic of their small group. Emma was no longer a burden to be protected, but a member of a community working together for survival. The Apache women taught her how to gather edible plants, how to preserve water, and how to walk efficiently across desert terrain. In return, Emma shared what she knew about the bandits who had attacked her wagon train, information that might prove valuable to the Apache people. During their journey to the trading post, Emma formed particularly close bonds with some of the Apache children who were close to her age. Despite the language barrier, children seemed to communicate through play and shared experience in ways that transcended words. She learned Apache games and songs, while teaching them English words and songs from her own childhood. One of the children, a girl named Chenoa, became especially close to Emma. Chenoa was about 10 years old and had lost her father in a raid the previous year. She and Emma recognized a kinship in their shared loss and uncertainty about the future. They would walk together during the day, sharing stories through gestures and the few words they had in common. Ayana watched these developing friendships with what Emma interpreted as approval. She began to understand that the Apache culture placed great value on community and mutual support. The idea of leaving someone to face hardship alone was foreign to their way of thinking. By accepting Emma into their group, even temporarily, they were demonstrating values that went to the heart of their identity as a people. As they drew closer to Martinez's trading post, Emma found herself dreading their arrival almost as much as she anticipated it. The trading post represented hope, the possibility of finding news about her parents and arranging passage to safety. But it also meant the end of her time with these remarkable people who had shown her kindness when she most needed it. The experience had changed Emma in ways she was only beginning to understand. The Apache people had challenged every assumption she had held about Native Americans. They were not savage enemies, but human beings with complex emotions, deep spiritual beliefs, and strong family bonds. Their knowledge of the desert and their ability to live in harmony with the harsh landscape had probably saved her life. On their final evening before reaching the trading post, Adsila sat with Emma and spoke about the choices that lay ahead. The elderly woman had grown fond of the brave young white girl who had adapted so readily to their ways. She warned Emma that the white world would try to make her forget everything she had learned among the Apache, that people would tell her these experiences were just a strange adventure to be left behind. Emma promised Adsila that she would never forget the kindness she had been shown or the lessons she had learned about living in harmony with the natural world. She had discovered strength she never knew she possessed, and had learned that people who seemed different on the surface often shared the same hopes and fears that drove her own actions. As Emma fell asleep that last night under the vast desert sky, surrounded by her Apache companions, she wondered what tomorrow would bring. Would Martinez have news of her parents? Would she be reunited with her family? Or would she face the terrifying prospect of being truly alone in the world? And if she did find her parents, how could she explain the transformation that had taken place within her during these days with Ayana and his people? The stars above seemed unusually bright that night, as if the desert itself was acknowledging the significance of the journey that was nearing its end. Emma had entered the wilderness as a frightened child, but she would emerge from it as something different, someone who had seen beyond the boundaries of her old world and discovered that humanity came in forms she had never imagined. The Martinez trading post appeared like a mirage in the shimmering heat of the late afternoon sun. It was a sprawling adobe building with thick walls designed to keep out both the desert heat and potential attackers. Corrals held horses and mules, while wagons and pack animals clustered around the main building like ships anchored in a harbor. To Emma, who had seen nothing but wilderness for days, it looked like civilization itself. Joshua Martinez emerged from the trading post as soon as he spotted their unusual group approaching. He was a stocky man in his 40s, with graying hair and weathered features that spoke of decades spent in the harsh frontier environment. What struck Emma immediately was the way he greeted Ayanna and the Apache survivors. Not with fear or suspicion, but with genuine concern and respect. Martinez spoke fluent Apache, and Emma watched as Adsila quickly explained their situation. The trader's expression grew increasingly grim as he heard about the attack on the Apache camp and learned about Emma's own tragic circumstances. When the story was finished, Martinez studied Emma for a long moment before speaking to her in accented but clear English. "Little girl," he said gently, "you have been through much. But I think maybe I have good news for you." Emma's heart began to race. Could it be that her parents were alive after all? Martinez gestured for her to follow him inside the trading post, while Ayanna and the Apache group began setting up a temporary camp nearby. The interior of the trading post was a fascinating mixture of cultures and goods. Native American pottery sat next to European tools. Mexican silver jewelry was displayed alongside American firearms, and the air was filled with the scents of different spices and leather goods. But Emma barely noticed any of this. Her attention was focused entirely on what Martinez might tell her about her family. Martinez led her to a small office area where he conducted his business. From a wooden box, he pulled out a leather journal and began flipping through pages covered with his careful handwriting. 3 days ago, he said, a group of survivors from a wagon train attack came through here. They spoke of bandits in Devil's Canyon and mentioned a missing child, a girl named Emma Henderson. Emma's legs nearly gave out from relief. "My parents," she whispered. "Are they alive?" Martinez nodded slowly. "Your father was wounded but alive when they passed through. Your mother, she was, how do you say, desperate with worry for you." They continued east toward Fort Collins with the other survivors, hoping to find help in organizing a search party. The news was both wonderful and complicated. Her parents were alive, but they were now several days' journey away and probably had no idea where to look for her. Martinez explained that Fort Collins was about a week's travel from the trading post, and the route was dangerous for a small group, especially with winter approaching. As if reading her thoughts, Martinez continued, "I have been expecting someone to come looking for you. Your mother, she made me promise to watch for any sign of a young girl matching your description. She left money to pay for supplies and safe escort if you should turn up here." Emma felt tears of joy and relief streaming down her face. Even in the chaos of the attack and their flight to safety, her mother had thought ahead and planned for the possibility that Emma might find her way to the trading post. It was exactly the kind of practical thinking that had made Sarah Henderson such a capable frontier woman. But even as Emma celebrated the news that her parents were alive, she found her thoughts turning to Ayanna and the Apache survivors who had become like family to her over the past few days. Martinez seemed to understand her conflicted feelings. "The Apache people who brought you here," he said, "they have suffered much. The same bandits who attacked your wagon train have been raiding in this area for months. They strike settlements, steal what they can, and disappear into the mountains. Both white and Apache families have paid the price." Martinez went on to explain that he had been working with local military authorities and tribal leaders to track down the bandit gang. The information that Emma and the Apache survivors could provide about the attacks might be crucial in finally bringing the criminals to justice. Over the next 2 days, while preparations were made for Emma's journey to Fort Collins, she spent as much time as possible with her Apache companions. She had grown particularly close to Adsila and young Chenoa, and the thought of saying goodbye to them was almost as painful as her original separation from her parents had been. During this time, Emma learned more about Apache culture and customs than she could have imagined. Adsila taught her about the importance of harmony between humans and nature, about the spiritual significance of various desert plants and animals, and about the Apache concepts of courage and honor that had guided Ayanna's decision to help a lost white child. Ayanna himself seemed changed by the experience as well. Through their improved communication, Emma learned that saving her had been more than just an act of kindness. It had been a spiritual calling that he couldn't ignore. He believed that their meeting had been orchestrated by forces beyond human understanding, and that both of their destinies had been altered as a result. On the second evening at the trading post, an unexpected development changed everything once again. A group of riders approached just as the sun was setting, and Emma's heart nearly stopped when she recognized two of the figures dismounting from their horses. Her parents had not waited for a search party to be organized. They had come looking for her themselves. The reunion was everything Emma had dreamed of during her darkest moments in the desert. Her mother swept her into fierce embrace, while tears streamed down both their faces. Her father, his left arm still in a sling from a bandit's bullet, held them both with his good arm and whispered prayers of gratitude. Sarah Henderson was a woman in her mid-30s with auburn hair and green eyes that reflected both strength and compassion. She had grown up on the frontier and possessed the practical skills necessary for survival in harsh conditions. When she learned the full story of Emma's rescue and the kindness shown to her daughter by Ayanna and the Apache survivors, her reaction surprised everyone present. Instead of the fear or suspicion that many white settlers would have shown toward Native Americans, Sarah approached Adsila and Ayanna with genuine gratitude and respect. Through Martinez, who served as translator, she thanked them repeatedly for saving her daughter's life and treating her with such kindness. But Sarah Henderson was more than just grateful. She was observant and intelligent enough to recognize an opportunity when she saw one. During her years on the frontier, she had learned to judge people by their actions rather than their appearance or background. She could see that the Apache people who had helped Emma were decent, honorable individuals who deserved better than the persecution they usually received from white society. Sarah had also heard the stories about the bandit raids and the suffering they had caused to both white and Apache communities. As she listened to the accounts of the attacks and the losses suffered by both groups, an idea began to form in her mind. She had always been a woman of action, someone who believed in solving problems rather than simply complaining about them. That evening, as the various groups shared a meal around Martinez's large fire, Sarah Henderson stood and asked for everyone's attention. What she said next would indeed alter Ayanna's destiny in ways that no one could have predicted. "These bandits have brought suffering to all of us," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. "They have attacked our wagon train, destroyed Apache homes, and stolen from anyone they encountered. They have made enemies of people who should be allies in this harsh land." She paused and looked around the circle, making eye contact with both white and Apache faces in the flickering firelight. "But what if we could turn this situation around? What if instead of continuing to see each other as enemies, we worked together to solve our common problem?" Martinez translated her words for those who needed it, and Emma could see interest growing in the eyes of the listeners. Sarah continued, "My husband and I came west to start a new life, to build something better than what we left behind. We have skills. He is a blacksmith. I know medicine and farming. We have some money saved, and we have the determination to succeed." Emma watched as her mother outlined an ambitious plan that would bring together the resources and knowledge of both white settlers and Apache people. Sarah proposed establishing a new kind of settlement, one where both groups could live and work together for mutual benefit and protection. The idea was revolutionary for its time, but Sarah Henderson had the vision and practical experience to make it work. She suggested that the Apache knowledge of the land, their tracking and survival skills, and their understanding of desert agriculture could be combined with white technology, tools, and capital to create a community unlike any other in the territory. Ayanna listened intently as the proposal was translated for him. Emma could see him weighing the possibilities, considering both the potential benefits and the enormous challenges such an undertaking would face. Most white settlements viewed Apache people as enemies to be driven away or destroyed, while many Apache bands had little reason to trust white promises after years of broken treaties and betrayed agreements. But the circumstances were unique. The bandit attacks had created a situation where cooperation offered benefits that neither group could achieve alone. The Apache survivors needed supplies, tools, and protection to rebuild their lives. The white settlers needed knowledge of the land and help in defending against future attacks. Sarah Henderson was proposing something more than just temporary cooperation. She was envisioning a permanent alliance that could serve as a model for peaceful coexistence in a region where such relationships were almost unknown. It was a bold and risky proposition that would require enormous courage from everyone involved. Over the next several hours, the discussion continued around the fire. Adsila proved to be a powerful advocate for the plan, arguing that the Apache people had nothing to lose by trying something new. Their traditional way of life was already under threat from the advancing tide of white settlement and the ongoing conflicts with various military forces. Emma watched her mother navigate the complex discussions with skill and sensitivity. Sarah had an intuitive understanding of how to build trust and find common ground between people who had been taught to see each other as enemies. She listened carefully to Apache concerns and addressed them honestly, acknowledging the history of broken promises while making clear that she was offering something different. The breakthrough came when Ayana finally spoke at length in his own language. Martinez translated his words for the white members of the group, and Emma felt her heart swell with pride for this Apache warrior who had saved her life and was now willing to risk everything for a chance at peace. Ayana said that the spirits had guided him to save Emma for a reason that was now becoming clear. The attack on the Apache camp and the rescue of the white girl had brought together people who might never have met otherwise. Perhaps this was meant to be the beginning of something new, a way of living that honored both Apache traditions and white innovations. He proposed a trial period. 1 year during which both groups would work together to establish the new settlement and see if their different ways of life could truly be compatible. If the experiment failed, both sides would be free to go their separate ways. If it succeeded, it could become a permanent home for anyone willing to live in peace and cooperation. The agreement that emerged from those fireside discussions would indeed change Ayana's destiny forever. Instead of spending his life as a warrior in an increasingly hopeless struggle against white expansion, he would become a leader in a new kind of community that offered hope for both Apache and white families. Emma's rescue had been just the beginning. Her remarkable mother's vision and courage would transform that chance encounter in the desert into the foundation for something unprecedented in the American West. A place where former enemies could become neighbors, where different cultures could enrich rather than destroy each other, and where the wisdom of the Apache people could be combined with the energy and resources of white settlers to create a better life for everyone involved. As Emma fell asleep that night, surrounded by her reunited family and her Apache friends, she understood that her adventure in the desert had been about much more than survival. It had been about discovering that the barriers between people often exist only in their minds, and that courage and compassion could overcome even the deepest prejudices and fears. The settlement that Sarah Henderson envisioned would face many challenges in the months and years to come, but it would ultimately succeed beyond anyone's wildest dreams, becoming a beacon of hope in a troubled land, and proving that former enemies could indeed become family when they shared common goals and mutual respect.